Alphonsine Momareke, a young 16-year-old student attending a college run by nuns, saw a figure that no one else could see.
On November the 28th, which by the way was a Saturday, we all went to the refectory. I began tidying up the plates when I heard a voice saying, "Child." I found myself isolated from my surroundings. I lost sight of all my friends around me, and all I could see was a cloud. A beautiful lady stood in the cloud. I asked her, "Who are you, my lady?" And she answered, "I am the mother of the Word."
She was still very young at the time, so it would not have been her imagination. The expression Nyina wa Jambo in Kinyarwanda, Mother of the Word, did not appear in any of the religious materials that we had at that time.
In order to maintain the highest standards of scientific impartiality, the aid of internationally acclaimed independent experts was sought. Following detailed research, they presented their findings and opinions.
I concentrated on Alphonsine Momareke's gaze. Alphonsine was surrounded by a multitude of journalists who ceaselessly photographed her using a flash. Before an apparition, she would blink at the flashes, but not during an apparition. One could say that she had become totally disconnected from the world around her. Successive tests showed that during an ecstasy, all links of these girls with the outside world ceased. They disengaged. They did not see the world around them as we did. They heard nothing. They entered another world that became more real than the reality that surrounded them. With free will, one can maintain such a state for perhaps 1 minute, 2 minutes, but undoubtedly not for 10 minutes or an hour. That is impossible. There must be something that captures their gaze. The same goes for hearing. She heard a voice that others clearly could not hear. The young people's gazes were turned towards the sky, directly at the burning sun, directly overhead. For over an hour they faced the sun without burning their retinas. I'd very much like an explanation, for it is undoubtedly a phenomenon that falls outside human will. Clearly, even of a hysteric, for his eyes, his retinas would burn, of course, yet theirs did not.
Clinical examinations apart, the medical commission initiated long-term psychiatric tests. The visionary's psychological condition was appraised. Each was individually examined for epileptic tendencies, drug addiction, hysteria, and any signs of mental instability.
We have been following the case of these children for 1, 2, 3 years. It was much more than just a matter of a single examination. We saw how they evolved, and apparitions apart, there was nothing we could reproach them for. I can offer no medical explanation. I can offer no earthly explanation. Clearly, there is something else happening here that science can but record, and that is all.
The apparitions were accompanied by a variety of supernatural phenomena. The visionaries experienced journeys that could be qualified as mystic, which at times lasted over 10 hours. Ecstasies were long and silent, with Alphonsine or Natalie stretched out, motionless as if submerged in a coma. Their weight increased to a point that it became very difficult to lift them. In such a state, they experienced journeys of the soul, made visits beyond their surroundings, where they saw images they recounted on their return.
I remember one day exceptionally well. She appeared before me and said, "You will tell your superior that I want to take you on a journey." I was delighted to be able to go to my headmistress and to tell her, "The Virgin Mary is taking me on a journey." She took me to a place where people were a bit sad. It wasn't nice to look at, and so I asked her, "Why did you bring me here? It's sad." She replied, "One must please God. One must do what God wants, or one would end up here." Then we arrived in a different place that was calmer, but equally sad. Right. It was not jolly, but in comparison with the first place, it was better. We then arrived in yet another place. It was wonderful. I could hear sounds, music, sweet voices. I said, "But I cannot see anybody here." She replied, "For as long as you are on earth, you will not see the people who sing." That, more or less, revealed what awaits me, depending, for instance, on my behaviour, including certain difficulties that I have to face. But of course, I should not forget the essentials, to stick with the rosary, the Mass, live her Son's mysteries, live the sacraments that the Church offers, for it is from these that I will draw my strength.
We made some research to find out if there was any outside influence on her. We saw that she could not have this knowledge on her own, or found this in any book, and we knew that such a rosary had existed. However, nobody in this country, not even priests or bishops, knew the Rosary of the Sorrows existed.
The Virgin Mary's apparition on the day of the Assumption in 1982 was prophetic, as events 12 years later were to confirm.
Everybody expected a joyous, festive apparition, yet the opposite happened, and everybody was surprised and rather stupefied to be faced with Calvary. The Virgin Mary showed herself to the visionaries with tears in her eyes, crying. She was inconsolable. Her sadness was that she was carrying us a message of salvation which we did not wish to receive. When we examined the comportment of the visionaries, upon analysis, we realized that it was serious.